Our next speaker is a fellow Texan, Dan Baxter. His expertise in leadership, organizational turnarounds, and customer engagement comes from his decades of experience as a military officer, decorated fighter pilot, and business executive working in various high-risk, high-consequence companies and environments around the world. Commander Dan Baxter is a retired military officer of over 24 years in the U.S. Navy, culminating his command of an FA-18C Hornet Squadron of over 220 men and women. He has over 3,200 flight hours, 720 aircraft carrier landings on 9 different carriers, and over 40 combat missions in F-14A and FA-18AF aircraft. For the past 9 years, he has worked as a business consultant executive within a broad spectrum of environments and industries, such as oil and gas, mining, manufacturing, and healthcare. He's delivered leadership development and change management strategies for Fortune 500 clients, such as Chevron, Exxon, and JP Morgan across US, Canada, Australia, and Asia, along with work for the US Bureau of Medicine and Veterans Administration hospital systems. His roles encompass leadership for unifying all internal and external initiatives, along with services designed to deliver sustainable value creation for customers and business partners alike. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dan.
In January of 2020, before COVID hit, my teammates and I were called out to San Francisco by a former customer who had just landed her new job. And as she got out there, unfortunate for the company she had just joined, they found themselves where they had just unexpectedly lost one of their most valued and storied and first customers. They were somewhat taken aback, and they had done a quick investigation to try to figure out where they went wrong. They talked to the client, they looked at some of the data, they looked at what some of their people and processes had wound up delivering from a customer standpoint, and they realized that there was some work left to be done. They were somewhat surprised, but very similar to other companies that I've come across, they looked at it and they said, well, we have the right processes, we have the right people with the right pedigree in place, and somehow, some way, we still missed the mark with our customer. And because they were servicing the logistics industry, and they were doing so in a somewhat innovative way using technology, they had hired a bunch of people who had a lot of tech savvy from straight out of school with some of the highest grades out there. And they were surprised that these folks were not able to meet the customer's demand on how to use the technology to gain all the business bottom line that their technology and their service could provide. And I would say this is no different of a problem that Daniel Goleman discovered in 1985 when he talked about the difference between IQ and EQ. And in this case, it seemed to be that what was coming out of their customer engagement center, if you will, was something that they certainly had plenty of IQ, but I think they were missing some opportunities on how to deliver not only the answers, but the care and feeding that the customers required to feel confident moving forward. And so because they didn't have that, and these folks, although they were very bright in school and in technology, they had never really been provided any of the tools that would make it reasonable to believe that they would be successful in navigating a pretty dynamic customer situation that existed. And so we spent a couple of days on site finding out exactly what had happened, looking through some of the correspondence. As you might imagine, there's a lot of detail that could be uncovered, a lot of emails back and forth, a lot of call logs, and all the things that you might imagine that come from the fact that a call center may actually record it for customer service sake later on. And we had all of that. And so every night after we would spend the day there, I would go back to my hotel or maybe go try to enjoy a little bit of San Francisco. And I wondered if these young people had not been set up for failure, not just to their own education and background, but also maybe how they had grown up. And so I just started doing a very informal poll that's probably not worth much, but it's very interesting to me because as a professional people watcher, one of the things I was always interested in is what are the effects of today's society on our young people. I have kids that range from 20 to 25, and they've certainly been informed in a good way and perhaps held back in many ways due to the technology that's been integrated with their daily lives. So what I would do as I was walking through San Francisco for that weekend, we spent 2 days finding out about the company, then we had the weekend. And on the mornings prior to lunch, I would spend the entire day. I grew up in the South, so if you drove by somebody or walked by somebody, everybody kind of waves or says hi or notices. And that's probably not so common as today as it was when I was younger. So I spent the whole half of the day prior to lunch in San Francisco, and what I was trying to determine is every person I walked past, I wanted to see what percentage of people would actually look at me and be able to communicate back should I in some way communicate with them. In other words, they weren't distracted by technology. And I would do that. I did this for 2 days over the weekend, prior to lunch on both days. And surprising to me, or sadly surprising, was the fact that 72% of the people that I passed by in close proximity would not have had the opportunity to have a micro interaction with me because they were distracted by technology. I thought, wow, that's pretty high. After lunch, I'd count as many people as I can that I would go by who were not distracted, and I would try to see what percentage of people would actually respond to some sort of micro interaction like, good morning, good afternoon, how you doing? Sometimes even just a head nod, which I would expect maybe like a head nod back or a smile. And out of those percentage of people who could interact in a micro way, if you will, 83% simply did not respond. And I thought, well, maybe this is the big city, and maybe it's a generational thing, or maybe it's just because I don't look all that friendly to talk with. But I thought about, what if my kids had grown up in that environment and for 20 years they missed all of those percentage of opportunities for micro opportunities to interact? How might that create a deficit for them and their ability to understand the people that they're talking to, understand their problems and concerns, and be able to essentially address those in maybe an adaptive way, in maybe a caring way, in maybe an empathetic way. So I think really what we were seeing wasn't just a process problem, it wasn't just a training problem. We also had to, maybe it was a tool problem, because one thing I learned in the military is that it's unreasonable to have an expectation of people to be successful in something if you haven't provided them the experience and or the training to do that. And so over the next couple of days, those were some of the things that we looked to help this company with. And those are some of those things I'm going to be sharing with you today, as I think might be a good way to help you in your customer engagement journey. The problem that they were experiencing was no different than some of the others that we'd come across, which is they were experiencing suffering, frankly, of lack of personalization from their people and their process. The market is saturated with innovation and intelligence around providing a better customer experience based on information, which today is readily available. Things such as demographics, job titles, industries, company size, etc. And customer-facing roles and technologies have extensive profiles on an individual and the company, but sometimes they lack the understanding of the true desire of those people for how they want to be communicated with. Gartner estimates that 1 in 3 customers leave after just one bad experience. Based on our own data, we know that a large majority of the customers that leave or don't buy is due to the lack of perceived care. But what is perceived as caring is always different to each person. An average buyer receives 100 plus emails a day, maybe opens 23%, and clicks further than that on approximately 2%. Scaling personalized intentional communication might not currently be an option. However, teaching people that are customer representative agents for you, teaching them to have the tools to adapt to each of those customers will be something that is possible and something that we're going to talk about how best to do today. Hi, my name is Dan Baxter. I've had the honor of being a judge for the Customer Centricity Award since, I think basically since it started, both as a North American judge, some of the International World Series. And I'm humbled to share some of my insights and experiences, be asked to do this, and share some of my experience on how best to engage and serve customers. It's a daunting task to provide insights and methods you aren't already using or experts on or with. Additionally, former speakers that I've enjoyed getting to see have set an amazingly high bar for both content and presentation of information. And certainly all of the groups that have been here more than once have all benefited from that. My resume to get here is probably a little different than most, and it's certainly been fun, but no doubt has provided my views, which might be different from your own, on today's discussion. I hope that my 24 years in the U.S. Navy, where I got to fly some cool high-performance jets, but also got to lead some amazing young men and women around the world, I hope that experience, coupled with my 9+ years of traveling the world in a great second career, helping clients and customers deliver improved business outcomes for themselves, their customers, and their business partners, and or their investors. I hope that that experience provides some informative topics for today's discussion. I'm currently blessed with the opportunity to serve the U.S. government and some of its agencies to deliver integrated and quality medical care to both our active duty military in action and some of the veterans like myself who have left military service and are looking for quality or access to quality care. So prior to the current job I'm with, I was the Chief Customer Officer for Equilibria. It's an international consultancy focused on helping business deliver their operational and safety goals through helping individuals and teams realize their potential. That was the company with which the story I started off with I was a part of as the Chief Customer Officer when we got that opportunity. In order to bring some amount of credibility and insight to today's conversation, I asked my friends at Equilibria, with whom I am currently a board advisor to now, to share some data that we mined specifically for today and hopefully to add to today's topic, which I'd like to discuss how we can tailor our customer engagement beyond just personas or generalities. I think Equilibria's ability, when I was originally attracted to them, came from their ability to operationalize personality tendencies in both teaming, communication, safety, operations around the world. And it intrigued me so much to wonder how effective all of this was and how much more effective I could have been in the Navy as a young leader if I'd had these same tools, trainings, and understandings back then. So my fascination and passion for leadership, or the ability to influence others to accomplish something they may otherwise not be inclined to do, especially in hard or high performance environments, has helped me, I think, be successful when engaging and serving diverse customers. They are, after all, both leadership and serving customers, both highly people-centric endeavors. And great customer engagement and service requires the same insight and intentionality to be successful at meeting the specific needs of a customer, same as it would be to the specificity of meeting those needs for a team member. What I've also learned is that any success I had might have been only left to my luck and my own natural approach, rather than the product of informed and purposeful design, proper tools, and training in and around how to deal with people specifically. Sure, we had a lot of training on leadership, but probably some of the best in the world. But the tools to manage and understand oneself to the benefit of others was still not at the level of what I know now is possible. Since my service in the military, I've been lucky enough to help customers in industries all over the world, such as energy, oil and gas specifically, mining, medical, construction, and technology. And most recently, I've been able to support the government agencies that support our brave men and women in the armed forces, and to get access to that mental and physical health care that they need, both in their service and afterwards. I've been fascinated in studying how the world is slowly losing its ability to really connect on a human level, despite the increased virtual proximity that technology provides. kind of like my story earlier of walking down the streets of San Francisco. COVID seemed to put this challenge on steroids, and so we have an increasing distancing from our customers beyond that of the old days where sales teams are on the sales floor, could talk to the customer, understand them, and service their needs real time. My objective for today will be to provide some ideas on how to predict, service, and respond to customers in ways that will give you the best chance to embolden your brand and remediate any issues as best as possible. To do this, my discussion today will be broken down in 3 simple parts. First, I'll share some insights at a high level on how to reimagine the processes, procedures, and models you use to enable your customer outreach or customer service programs. Second, I'll share a simple lexicon or set of tools for how customers can be identified and how they will view your customer service programs and representatives, and somehow predictably, and in some cases predictably so. And then lastly, we can use some simple content and structured communication insight to show how we care and meet the expectations of some of your particular customers. So let's talk about the first step as we go and we review our process for engaging with customers. One of the first things that we will always do is we'll do a roll up and we'll map all the personalities of all the key and central stakeholders within our entire customer engagement ecosystem. Once we understand their different personalities, we'll be able to determine how much bias and diversity we actually have at the varying levels of our team. The next step is that we'll identify the process that enables the employees that serve your customers along with the ones that your customers will use. We'll identify both of those processes, and if you think about it, how many times has a process been created with that generic person in mind, but that process hasn't been understood how it's going to be consumed differently by people of varying personalities? And so where this really came to light for me was we used to create a lot of checklists on how to do very important things in an airplane. Very similarly, we create a checklist, mostly the engineers would write it, and then we'd go through this process of customization. And what I didn't realize at the time is we're in the business of standards, but yet we still allowed for customization by pilots of these checklists. And this customization would help them be able to see and more verifiably take each step. And so while you would never marginalize the integrity of those procedures, you would personalize it in a way to ensure success. And I think that this is what I'm really trying to get at the heart at. When you review these processes that have been created, how can you then look and say, how might we better inform these programs, these processes, to look for any gaps as to how they may be used inappropriately by our customer service representatives or be consumed by our customers. And I think when you look at it through that lens with your team, rather than just is the content correct, but really important in communications isn't just what content is sent or received, but also the prioritization as well as the impact that it has. How does it make people feel? As we look at processes, I think of it this way. On the left, you have a generic process that was defined, if you will, by the program, the people involved, the culture that was required, and perhaps the tools that are going to enable that. And most of them, if you really look at it, were written for a generic human being. In the middle, I think some companies and customer engagements have started to get it better because what are they doing? They're now starting to inform those with personas. And what I'm advocating for is that we review these process procedures and SOPs that we've created, and we do it in a way where we actually now take a lens of understanding predictable personality lenses that each of those personas have. And I think when we've seen them do this, we actually get a much more informed customer experience for our people that we're trying to serve. So that's essentially how we want to take a look at process, and I found that to be fairly interesting. And we never did it when I was in the military, and I think we would have benefited from it had we. We allowed for it, but it was never a predictable process like I'm advocating for here and now. So now that we've taken the time to reimagine or think about how we might look at our programs and procedures again going forward, I want to give you some tools to provide a common framework, a lexicon that we've used both at Equilibria. It's a personalized overlay that I've been alluding to. Equilibria calls it their PDI, or Personality Diversity Indicator. You've probably seen many things like it out there in industry that helps discern an individual's personality tendencies. This type of approach is highly accepted in many industries around the world. Certainly the PDI is one that's been successful due to its simplicity, its applicability to everyday work and everyday workers or by workers, along with the speed and impact that can be immediately recognized in day-to-day operations or communications, such as communications with our customers. Many of you may already have similar tools or overlays in place that your team are using. And if so, great, this will resonate with you. But for the ones that aren't, this might be something new that can take your customer engagement team and experience up a notch. And so one of the things we also will be able to do with this is not only deliver to the customers well, but understand them well enough to provide the intentionality that's going to be required to retain and delight them as required. So the key may not necessarily be the tool as much as your team's ability to use it seamlessly, reflexively, and adeptly as problems arise with both your stakeholders, internal and external, as well as your customers. So the PDI from Equilibria is fairly simple. Like most personality tools, it is broken up in 4 quadrants for describing the human. They use colors. They use red to represent the doer, or the person who focuses primarily on the what of a situation or what needs to get done. For these type of folks, they're fast movers, they like to get it done. We will find out that it's best to be clear and concise with them. The blue is the color that defines the top color personality that's really focused on the why. These are the deep thinkers. These are the folks who are going to take some amount of time to really understand what's going on, but why it's going on. For these types of folks, we want to give them time to consume information, time to reflect on it. We want to present softly and include a value add. The green color represents the thinker, and the blue would be for someone who is a supporter or is empathetic. The green is for someone who's the thinker, and they like to think about the how things get done. For these type of folks, you want to be very accurate, very realistic, and be prepared to provide a high degree of information. And expect that you may be asked a lot of that information if it isn't provided. And then lastly, the top color yellow is someone who is not very similar to the blue in that, like a relator, but they're a socializer. And sometimes these can be confused with people who are very extroverted, but really a lot of these people really enjoy engaging with people. And they're in their mind, of all the questions they're trying to understand, is they're saying, who's involved? Who am I going to get to work with? And with these type of folks, you want to be warm and friendly, and a smile will go a long way. So these are some of the I would say filters that define the PDI. And now that I've given you a basic understanding, I want to give you some insight. So, over 3 million people have taken the PDI around the world in various industries in various countries and cultures. And perhaps it would be useful for you to understand that of all those people taken all around the world, that just under 30%, the top color percentage are those top color blues, the empaths, the people who like to relate, and the people that are asking why. Another close to 30% just underneath are the top color greens, which are always asking how. And are looking for information. What's interesting and probably important for you to know as you design your programs and engagement is these people that make up 60% of the population that we see from the PDI are the people asking how and why. And they're also the people that take the longest amount of time to make a decision, process a decision, to feel comfortable, and to take risk once they have enough information and time to reflect. That's pretty important to know, and we see that play out across multiple industries when people who are much more fast movers, like the red and the yellow, are the decision makers, or maybe a high preponderance of them are decision makers. And what we know is that just under 21% of the people polled over 4 years, and out of these people that I'm talking about, the data set's about 465,000 people around the world. And so just under 21% of those are the red, the doers, the people ask, and the what, the fast movers. And then the rest of the people are very people-centric socializers, those yellows. And they too are just over 20% of the population. And a 0.1 percentage are people that are equally quad, which means that all of these things are equally accessible for them. So that's a little bit of information as to really who all your customers predominantly are. Now, in certain industries, we've seen that a highly technical or highly engineering-centric company, you can see that the green and the blue actually go up by 6 to 8 points, and usually at the cost of the yellow or the people-centric socializing people. And so that's a pretty good standard deviation based on the industry that we've worked with. Good information for you all to know. The reason this is important is it's very easy to communicate very little amount of information that's required for, say, your red yellows who just care predominantly about what, and they're ready to move on. They don't care about much more information. But like I was telling you before, if you create good programs and good tools for your customer engagement people, you create programs that can be where they can find equal success no matter who they're talking to. And this again goes back to, you don't give everybody all of just what they want, but you create a process that can give everybody all of what they need. And then you can tailor as you get better and more adaptive to who you're talking to or have more information, but it's a good place to start. And you know, the blue greens or the green blues of the world, they're the ones who are going to take the most amount of time, require the most amount of information. But yet when they finally make a decision, they're going to be usually the people that drop the mic because they've taken so much time to think deeply. So this is really important when you're creating and reviewing your programs, I think. And so we also polled and looked at some data, and we asked, what is most likely going to stop someone from using a company's services through the PDI lens? And 39% of the respondents they said, I feel like I'm speaking to someone who doesn't care about resolving my issue. So this idea of care came up, and the majority of these people that were responding were in the majority of the blue and the green that I discussed earlier. But that was the biggest response as to someone who might leave your company or your product or your service. 16% said that the reason they might stop using someone's services is, I go through numerous robots to get to an actual person. And you probably are dealing with this as you try to automate many of your processes. And then a lot of the top color greens said that more often than not, they didn't feel like their loyalty was rewarded. And then the top color reds said that they would leave a company anytime that they had to wait 3 minutes or more to talk to a person or get things resolved, because again, they're those fast movers who don't like to spend a lot of time. So those are some interesting stats that we came up with as we started to ask customer-centric questions. Again, I think the main point around personalities is, one thing is they all coalesced around is, what is it that they really wanted to work with an organization, a product or a service that showed that it cared. So what does someone who have to do to show that they care? And so we'll give you the kind of tools. So a red, for instance, Some of your customer service agents can use tools to actually understand and listen, whether it be on typed correspondence or by talking with someone on the phone or VTC. If they hear someone who says, I want and I need, these words can very likely tell them they're talking to someone who's read and wants the what. So in other words, they're speed listening, and it may sound like they're ignoring, and you have very little time to kind of address this person's problem. So we like to say when you're listening with these sort of tools in place, you're paying attention with intention. And this is a lot of what we train and provide tools for people to do that are in the customer service roles. The other thing is, what if you hear someone who's constantly asking for more information, more ranking order or prioritization? In other words, has a questioning attitude. This is, if they also use the word I think or the word think repeatedly, this is a very common tell of someone who's a top color green and who's trying to get at the how. And so you may have your customer representatives be prepared to provide more time, information, and detail to meet the expectations of this customer. That's how you would show them you care to a high color green. For a yellow, they may ask, who am I talking to? Right from the get-go, what's your name? That's a key tell for a top color yellow, because again, they're very people-centric. They want to understand who you are. They may even ask some personal information about, like, where are you located? Where are you from? Oh, I love your accent. That's something that a top color yellow would do to socialize, and the ability for your people to give that to them and respond in an adaptive way will, to a top color yellow, seem like care. Another good tell for a yellow is they may be so excited about the conversation they're having that they seem to be interrupting. They are selective listeners. They may use the word I feel is another tell. And the reason I'm giving you these information filters, these keywords, these listening style, and these tools, these are actually words that we realize that if you run through an AI filter, you can almost with 100% certainty look at people's emails, correspondence, and listening of language to understand exactly which personality you're dealing with. And that to me is the exciting part. Because as a leader or someone who engages with customers, meeting people where they're at and giving them what they need so they can have the best experience, that's really the whole purpose of leadership or customer engagement, and doing that well is really important. And so lastly, in and around the blue, they may use the words like I wonder. They may ask, why is that? They may say the words I believe. So one of the, I guess, cheat codes, if you will, is a top color red will use words like absolutely, and a blue will never use the word absolutely. And a high color red will almost never use the word I believe. They will just say I know. And so these are really important tells. We can't go through in all the depth, but again, teaching your people to overlay some sort of lens on the way they interact or provide services to people so that they pay attention and communicate with intention, I think is really going to be something you should take a look at if you're not already doing it well. So we've talked about how to take another look, renew, reimagine some of the process, procedures, SOPs that you're using to engage with customers. We've also introduced some tools, maybe a new lexicon to some of you, this overlay to allow for more personalization of how you engage customers, how you listen to customers, how you communicate with them. You know, all the training I ever did in the military, I think I've taken it all from a leadership perspective, or I've trained most of it, trained people in it. And I don't think it's much different from customer engagement. One of the foundational things that they say for a great leader and a great communicator, and I think in this case a great customer engagement person, is know yourself and know the person that you're talking to. And this is a great tool that I wish I had had when I was a young leader, because frankly the military doesn't give you a great tool other than iteration to get good at knowing who you are and how to manage yourself, and who people are that you're leading or working with, and how to serve them better. And so I really like having a tool that you can give to people that maybe aren't naturally empathic or iterative in the way they reflect on themselves and the people that they interact with. I hope the idea around taking a tool that allows for personalization understanding, perhaps the introduction of that is useful to you as you go out and you look to continue to meet your customers' needs and delight them along the way. So thank you very much for the opportunity. It's been a pleasure. I continue to look forward to learn from you all, and I hope to meet some of you in person one day. Thank you.